folks. All right, click the links, join channel, member, check out these, subscribe to our Patreon, the various other links. So what happened? SGW's outrage? Not really outrage. It's the pseudo outrage that you see so often with these people. Warner Brothers Discovery has axed about 13 non-people of the light executives as it tries to climb out of debt. Well, is it possible that you kind of skipped over some facts here? Were the shows that these execs were working on, were they underperforming? Well, yes, but it's very istophobic of you to notice that the shows weren't doing well. Why don't you just start with the truth and go from there? Sir, that is a bridge too far. If you hire based on these Bolshevik scores on the identity ladder, you're going to end up firing the POCs you hired because you didn't hire them on merit, or you're going to go out of business. There's no way around that. Just hire on merit, and you won't have to worry about this issue a few months or years down the line as you lose money. You realize, we should have done this at the start. Give the customer what they want. Sir, that's a very istophobic statement. You're not, and then they insert some Marxist Bolshevik propaganda here. It's like, just because your college professor told you it's true, is it possible your college professor was lying to you? They're just another, I don't know if they're as brainwashed as the lower professor, teachers in school, but, they're lying to you. All this kind of nonsense. I remember that Leslie Headland interview where she's talking about leaving money on the table because they didn't include enough Zer, otherkin, furry, POC, BLTs in the show, which it commits the one fallacy of thinking your audience is going to be cumulative instead of substituting one for the other, which is what has happened in comics and movies. Oh no, we've got like this one chunk of audience, and we're going to gain this other BLT POC audience when we put those shows. Well, okay, so follow my convoluted Machiavellian logic here. If the people you were selling to, Middle America, if you want to call them that, wanted to see themselves represented, or they wanted to see these certain type of shows, and they're the majority of your audience, and now you want to pander to these BLTs or otherkins who are like 1% of your audience. Okay, so if they want to be, if the Zer otherkin BLT PSCs want to see themselves represented, and so do the other groups, but one group is the majority and one group's not, so why would the first group stay? It's not going to be cumulative. You're going to alienate the big chunk of people who were supporting your industry, and you've substituted out this for this smaller group. You've kind of refined it down, but this isn't. This isn't chemistry. You're trying to rarefy some element. You want a cumulative audience. You shrunk your audience because you started putting all these bizarro, just Marxist talking points that your audience doesn't identify with. You are in Hollywood. You might value these things, but the majority of people don't, because they're not idiots. They know it's just you're just being brainwashed by these. The soup of the day is Marxism. It's like, we weren't born yesterday. We know the history of the past 100 years of where these ideas of these Karl Marx's ideas lead to. It's like, yes, you're putting them in movies. We see that. We know who's doing this. Yes, we see this ideology represented in shows and comics. Yes, we get that. But we are familiar with where it has led historically, and we don't want to see this on screen. So you lose your audience, and that's just kind of the stone cold bottom line. If you just gave the customer what they want, you wouldn't have a problem with all this kind of stuff. People don't want Marxist propaganda. Twitter tells you it's popular. Well, hey, plot twist, is proven not to be. And at some point, with a bunch of these Twitter kids, they have to realize they're getting emotionally invested in stuff that is way over the peak by decades in terms of movies and comics, like several decades. There's nothing wrong with getting involved in pop culture, even pop culture based comics or movies, as long as they're good, they're giving you what you want. That's like 10 years ago for movies, and for comics it's more like 30 years ago. So all of Hollywood is underwater because they're pushing Bolshevik propaganda. I mean, you might as well just start being open and honest about this. This is what it is. It's the 1914 all over again. And yes, these companies are huge, and they're sitting on a lot of cash reserves from older stuff that wasn't insane propaganda, is still bringing in cash, but you can't afford to lose money forever. Eventually, your shareholders are going to say, oh, okay, this is a nice experiment, but it's time to get some return on investment, because we notice either our dividends or our growth is on the decline, and that's not why we invested in a publicly traded company. For some of them, it is an ideology, but it's usually going to be people at the top, the board and the CEOs and all that kind of stuff. But for the bulk of the investors, no, they want a return on investment. So what happened was Zaslav canceled some shows that nobody watched because it hurt the brand and the brand identity. And what do you expect someone to do when he's put in charge of something and you have, oh, well, we're going to have to cut the dead weight that's not paying for itself? Oh, okay, that's a simple, reasonable, you've articulated a reasonable decision. Let's go forward from there. Oh, that's istophobic? No, it's not. It's a business. This isn't being subsidized by, I don't know, magical unicorn sprinkles. The SJWs attack his ethnicity and that of the board, but they don't explain, why that would be relevant, and they don't explain why the show shouldn't be canceled. It's like immediate ad hominem and deflection. How do you explain the low numbers? And the thing is, you can't explain away math. They went after him and the board because these loser shows, and that's what they are, and the thing is, I know they could make shows that don't suck. It's like, just start, if you're in these animation and comics and artists, it's like, just turn it around. You don't have to go down this path and like constantly make these shows that people say they want, but then they don't financially support. You have to pay for the things you want. It's even It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia did a issue on pirating stuff, which is kind of funny. Anyway, so these loser shows, okay, BLT, POC type of propaganda that no, if I'm joking around with this kind of stuff. It has a limited audience. I mean, that's there. I guess I could say it in a nicer way. That's the nicer way to say it. It has limited audience. Is it propaganda? Yeah, obviously it's propaganda. It's propaganda because it's massively overrepresented. That's kind of one of the definitions of propaganda. He didn't cancel it because the creators were POCs or female. There's plenty of POCs and females who are still on shows as long as their product is selling. It doesn't, like most of this stuff, if someone's interested in the bottom line being money, it's like that's all they're interested in. If you think Zaslav cares about if he's hired for ideological purposes, well, that's one thing. But if he's put in place to start turning things around, well, he has to start turning things around. They want to focus on better selling shows because it makes the brand stronger. So SJWs immediately deflect and ad hominem to a straw man because you can't refute the central argument that the numbers are low. It's like all you had to do was watch the show. SJWs want comics and shows, but here's the catch. They don't want to pay for them, or there are not as many SJWs out there as we were led to believe, which might have some truth to it. It's kind of the Twitter effect where 15% of the people on there are doing like 85% of the posting. So there's this massive overrepresentation in these soylent alt-left cat lady views. All they had to do is pay for the comics and shows instead of pirating them, and then they wouldn't have been canceled. If you want more of stuff, you have to pay for it. If you're on the opposite side of the aisle and you think Zaslav is I don't know, you think he's vaguely right-wing or something, you think he's going to dial back to woke, no, there's not a snowball's chance in hell of that. Woke Hollywood will die on this hill. They might cut out the absolute insane furry otherkin BLT POC stuff, but they're not gonna dial it back. It might have peaked, but you're not gonna go back to old stuff. Those days are over. So no matter what Disney or Hollywood or Warner Brothers does to try to get control of this, you can still safely look at Hollywood and go, yeah, it's just kind of over. You can get involved in something else with your free time. They still race swap every character, and they're going to continue to do that. And the light-colored hair and light-colored-eyed people will always be bad. That's not going to change, that Aryan stereotype stuff, because the sheep have accepted that. So it's here to stay. The Northern European will be a permanent evil stereotype in Hollywood. And I say that, and it's like, I know how it sounds a little tinfoil hat, but the longer this goes on, more and more people go, oh, yeah, the blonde thing, I noticed that. The red-haired thing, oh, I guess start noticing this correlation. Start plotting it on your mental imagery. And it's like, my God, watch a commercial. Who's the protagonist? Who's the antagonist? Who's made to look stupid, and who's smart and calm and capable, and who's just a freaking idiot? It's like, oh, that's really weird, because like these people who are totally evil, malicious, while simultaneously being incompetent. I mean, didn't they like build Europe? It's like something's not quite adding up. No, it was the space aliens that built Europe, apparently. Anyway, so Hollywood being woke. Hollywood brainwashing is generational. They've got to pause for a bit to allow this. They got to allow it to kind of reach a level of acceptance, and it will. People will adjust to this new level of woke, and then in a little while they'll increase it. It might be months, it might be years, but it's generational. Like these people are playing for the long term. It's kind of like propaganda genocide. It works in stages. And no, they're never going to go in the opposite direction. They are actively working to destroy nations. Yes, they do it through pop culture, but that's what they're doing. You'd have to be really, really head in the sand not to see what they're doing here. To turn them into economic zones, or merely economic zones, which they've pretty well successfully achieved with America and Canada. But they have to pause and let the sheep adjust. So, and there's something about Zaslav vaguely supporting Trump. That doesn't make him a fashionable one from the 1930s, because in the big scene of things, Trump is also a left-winger. And if you're on the left and you think Trump is some far right-winger, that doesn't make any sense when they say that kind of insane. They put people in the spectrum. You go like, oh, yeah, Trump's a German of the 1930s. You go, okay, well, that's an interesting spectrum you have, where you have him at the far end. But then where would you put the Germans of the 1930s if you have Trump and, like, Fox? They're all like contiguous, concentric. They're all on the same point of the line. So that your spectrum does. Oh no, they're the extreme far. Okay, so it seems like you're saying that everyone who isn't you is on the extreme far left, and Trump is basically equivalent to the Germans of the 1930s, and so is Zaslav himself, who is you can check his ethnicity himself, Polish, Russian, and other things. Very much not a German of the 1930s, though they call everyone that. It's like they have no idea how insulting it is to call someone who's Polish or Russian a German. It's like, have you guys read a book? No. Everything we know is learned from Hollywood. Okay, maybe it's time to examine that perhaps you don't know what you think you know. You know what Hollywood, what narrative they want to tell you. It's like, Nazi says what? It doesn't make somebody... Historical facts doesn't make people... Anyway, I mean, these people are mentally ill. I guess that kind of sums it up. That could kind of be every video. It's like, oh, mentally ill people on Twitter are pseudo-outraged about something while they're popping benzos and drinking wine. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, check me out, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.